Commander Sarah Chen floated in the cramped escape pod, her oxygen running dangerously low. The small vessel tumbled through space, its navigation systems fried from the explosion that had claimed her research ship 3 days ago. She had been part of a peaceful scientific expedition, studying gravitational anomalies near the Kepler system when everything went wrong. The attack had come without warning. Massive alien vessels, sleek and menacing, had emerged from hyperspace and opened fire on her unarmed research vessel. The ship's captain had barely managed to get Sarah into an escape pod before the hull breach sucked everything into the vacuum of space. Now she drifted alone, watching her life support systems slowly fail. Sarah had almost given up hope when the alien ship appeared. It was unlike anything in human databases, organic-looking curves mixed with crystalline structures that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. The vessel was enormous, easily 10 times the size of her destroyed research ship, yet it moved with impossible grace through the asteroid field where her pod had become trapped. A beam of soft blue energy reached out from the alien vessel, gently capturing her escape pod. Sarah felt her heart racing as she was pulled toward an opening that materialized in the ship's hull. She had heard stories of alien encounters, most of them ending badly for humans. First contact protocols demanded caution, but she had little choice in her current situation. The pod settled into what appeared to be a hangar bay, filled with the same crystalline structures she had seen on the ship's exterior. The atmosphere readings on her pod's sensors showed breathable air outside, though slightly different from Earth normal. As she prepared to open the hatch, Sarah wondered if she was about to meet her saviors or her captors. The beings that greeted her were unlike anything she had imagined. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, with elongated limbs and skin that seemed to shift between deep blue and purple hues. Their faces were angular, almost geometric, with large eyes that held an intelligence that was both alien and oddly comforting. Most striking were the patterns of bioluminescent markings that traced across their bodies like living tattoos. Human. The lead being spoke, its voice emanating from a translator device at its throat. The words came out in accented but understandable English. "You are injured and far from home?" Sarah looked down at her torn EVA suit and the cuts on her arms from when she had been thrown around during the ship's destruction. She nodded cautiously. "Yes, my ship was destroyed. I don't know who attacked us or why." The alien's bioluminescent markings pulsed in what Sarah somehow sensed was sympathy. "We are the Kalari. We witnessed the attack on your vessel by the hegemony forces. We could not arrive in time to save your ship, but we saved you." "The hegemony?" Sarah asked as the aliens led her through corridors that seemed more grown than built. The walls had an organic quality, smooth and warm to the touch. "A conquering force that has swept through this sector of space for the past 50 of your years," another Kalari explained. This one had more intricate patterns of light running across its form, suggesting higher rank. "They destroy any race they deem inferior or threatening. Your species, we fear, has caught their attention." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" The ranking Kalari, who introduced himself as Healer Zenth, gestured for her to sit on what appeared to be a living chair that molded itself to her form. "Your research ship was not the first human vessel to be attacked. The hegemony has been systematically eliminating human outposts and ships for the past 2 cycles. They see your rapid expansion and technological advancement as a threat to their dominance." As Zenth tended to her injuries with devices that seemed to repair her cells at the molecular level, he explained the Kalari situation. They were an ancient race, far older than humanity, but their pacifist nature had made them unwilling to fight the hegemony directly. Instead, they had retreated to the edges of known space, helping survivors when they could. "We have watched your species with great interest," Zenth continued. "Humans possess something rare in the galaxy, the ability to unite against common threats and fight with a ferocity that defies logic. Most races, when faced with the hegemony, either surrender or are quickly conquered. But humans have potential. Sarah learned that the Kalari had been documenting hegemony movements for decades, building a database of their ships, weapons, and tactics. They had waited for the right moment, the right ally, to make a stand. Sarah's rescue was not just an act of mercy, it was the beginning of something larger. "You must return to your people," Zenth said as Sarah's injuries healed with remarkable speed. "You must warn them of what comes. The hegemony fleet massing at the edge of your solar system numbers in the thousands. They plan to end human expansion once and for all." Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. "How do I get home? My ship is destroyed, and this is alien space." The Kalari had already thought of this. They provided her with one of their smaller vessels, a sleek craft that could make the journey to Earth in half the time it would take human ships. More importantly, they loaded it with their complete database on the hegemony, ship designs, weapon specifications, tactical patterns, and most crucially, the location of their staging areas. As Sarah prepared to leave, Zenth placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. The contact sent a warm sensation through her, and she realized the Kalari could communicate through touch as well as words. "Your species has never faced a threat like this," he said. "But you have something the hegemony does not understand. You fight not just for territory or resources, but for each other. They saved one human today, but we believe that one human might save many more." Sarah piloted the Kalari vessel through hyperspace, her mind racing with the implications of what she had learned. The ship's advanced systems showed her real-time intelligence on hegemony movements, and what she saw terrified her. Massive fleets were converging on human space from multiple directions. The attacks on outer colonies and research vessels had been probing actions, testing human responses and capabilities. She thought about her family on Earth, her colleagues scattered across human space, all the billions of people who had no idea what was coming for them. The Kalari had given her more than just her life. They had given humanity a chance to prepare. The journey to Earth took 3 weeks, during which Sarah studied every piece of intelligence the Kalari had provided. She learned about hegemony ship classes, their energy weapons that could slice through human armor like paper, and their tactics of overwhelming numerical superiority. But she also learned about their weaknesses, their rigid command structure, their inability to adapt quickly to unexpected tactics, and most importantly, their complete lack of understanding of human psychology. When Sarah finally saw the blue marble of Earth hanging in space ahead of her, she felt a mixture of relief and dread. She was home, but she carried news that would change everything. As she transmitted her identification codes to Earth Defense Command, she knew she was about to start a chain of events that would either save humanity or witness its destruction. The response from Earth was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours of her landing, Sarah found herself in front of the United Earth Council, telling her story to the most powerful people in human space. The evidence she presented left no room for doubt. Humanity was about to face its greatest challenge. Admiral Rebecca Martinez, the head of Earth's Fleet Command, studied the hegemony ship specifications with grim determination. "How long do we have?" "According to Kalari intelligence, the main assault force will reach Earth in approximately 4 months," Sarah replied. "The outer colonies will be hit first, probably within 6 weeks." The room erupted in urgent conversation as military leaders and politicians grappled with the magnitude of the threat. But Sarah noticed something in their voices that the Kalari had been right about. Humans didn't respond to overwhelming odds with despair. They responded with anger, determination, and an almost reckless courage that defied rational calculation. "They made a mistake," Admiral Martinez finally said, her voice cutting through the noise. They think they can intimidate us by picking off our ships one by one. They don't understand that every human they've killed has family, friends, comrades who will want vengeance. They've just given us the greatest unifying cause in human history. Sarah watched as the machinery of human civilization shifted into a war footing with frightening efficiency. Emergency sessions of the colonial parliaments, emergency military conscription, the immediate mobilization of every shipyard and factory in human space. But most importantly, she saw something that made her understand why the Kalari had believed in her species. Across human space, from the core worlds to the frontier colonies, the response was the same. When the news broke about the coming invasion, there was no panic, no calls for surrender or negotiation. Instead, there was a cold, focused rage that transcended political boundaries, cultural differences, and old grudges. Humanity had found its enemy, and humanity was going to war. The transformation of human space over the following months was nothing short of miraculous. What had once been a loose confederation of colonies and trading partners became a unified war machine focused on a single goal: survival. The hegemony had expected to face scattered resistance from individual worlds. Instead, they would encounter something unprecedented in their centuries of conquest. Admiral Martinez stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned UES Retribution, the first of humanity's new war fleet. The massive vessel stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull bristling with weapons that incorporated both human engineering and Kalari energy manipulation technology. Around her, hundreds of similar ships prepared for the first phase of humanity's response to the hegemony threat. The strategy was audacious and completely contrary to accepted military doctrine when facing a superior enemy. Instead of falling back to defend core worlds, humanity was taking the fight directly to the hegemony staging areas. Sarah Chen, now serving as the fleet's xenological advisor, had helped plan this preemptive strike using the intelligence provided by the Kalari. "All ships report ready for hyperspace jump," came the report from the communications officer. Around Earth, the largest military fleet in human history prepared to launch humanity's first interstellar war. "Jump coordinates confirmed," Sarah said from her position at the Fleet Intelligence Station. "Hegemony staging area Gamma 7, 12 light-years from their nearest major fleet concentration. According to Kalari data, they have approximately 300 vessels preparing for the assault on the Proxima Centauri colony cluster." Admiral Martinez nodded. The plan was to hit the hegemony forces before they could organize their attack using surprise and the unique capabilities of human military thinking to even the odds. "All ships, this is Admiral Martinez. Today we show the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity. Today we show them that humans don't just defend, we hunt. Fleet, execute hyperspace jump." The jump to hegemony space took 18 hours, during which final preparations were made and last-minute intelligence updates were received from Kalari sources. When the human fleet emerged from hyperspace, they found exactly what the intelligence had predicted: a massive hegemony force spread across several asteroid mining facilities, completely unprepared for an attack. The hegemony ships were impressive, their dark hulls absorbing light and their weapons designed for the systematic destruction of planets and space stations. But they had been designed to fight conventional enemies who followed conventional tactics. They had never faced anything like what humanity was about to unleash. "Begin Phase 1, Admiral Martinez ordered. The first wave of the attack came not from the massive human warships, but from thousands of small craft that had been launched during the hyperspace jump. Human fighter pilots, drawing on centuries of atmospheric combat experience, swarmed through the hegemony formation with a chaotic unpredictability that their enemies' tactical computers couldn't process. Captain Jake Torres piloted his fighter through a maze of hegemony fire, his wingman Sarah Kim staying impossibly close as they dove toward a massive enemy dreadnought. The hegemony point defense systems were designed to track predictable approach vectors, but human pilots flew like no other species in the galaxy. "Remember what the Kalari told us," Torres called over the comm system as he rolled his fighter upside down and accelerated directly toward the Dreadnought's bridge. "These guys have been winning through overwhelming firepower for centuries. They've never had to deal with crazy." The human fighters didn't try to destroy the massive hegemony ships. That would come later. Instead, they targeted sensor arrays, communications equipment, and weapon guidance systems. Each fighter carried specialized electronic warfare packages that had been developed specifically to disrupt hegemony technology, based on weaknesses the Kalari had identified. Within minutes, the organized hegemony formation began to dissolve as ships lost contact with each other and their targeting systems failed. But the real surprise was yet to come. "Phase 2. All ships," Admiral Martinez commanded. The human capital ships opened fire, but not with conventional weapons. Humanity had spent the past 4 months developing entirely new military technologies based on Kalari scientific principles and human engineering creativity. The results were devastating. The UES Retribution's main weapon was a gravity cannon that could create localized gravitational distortions. When fired at a hegemony ship, it didn't simply punch through armor. It twisted the entire vessel out of shape, crushing it from within. Other human ships carried quantum disruptors that could phase-shift enemy vessels partially out of normal space, leaving them unable to fire or maneuver. But perhaps the most effective weapons were the ones that took advantage of humanity's greatest strength: adaptability. Human ships carried modular weapon systems that could be reconfigured in real time based on enemy responses. When hegemony shields proved effective against one type of attack, human ships immediately switched to different approaches. The hegemony force, which had been preparing to annihilate human colonies, found itself under attack by an enemy that fought like nothing they had ever encountered. Human tactics seemed to change every few minutes, keeping the hegemony commanders constantly off balance and unable to mount effective counterattacks. Admiral Kethvar, commanding the hegemony force, watched in growing alarm as his fleet was systematically dismantled by the human attack. His species had conquered 47 different races over the past 5 centuries, and everyone had followed predictable patterns. When faced with superior firepower, they had either surrendered or fought desperate defensive actions. None had ever attacked first, and certainly none had done so with such apparent disregard for military logic. "How many human ships are engaging us?" he demanded of his tactical officer. "Sensors show approximately 800 vessels, Admiral, but their attack patterns make no sense. They appear to be operating without central coordination, yet their actions are precisely synchronized. Our tactical computers cannot predict their next moves." Kethvar studied the tactical display in confusion. Human ships were breaking off attacks just as they achieved advantage, only to strike at completely different targets. Their fighters flew in formations that should have been suicidal, yet somehow avoided destruction. Most disturbing of all, every time his forces adapted to one human tactic, the humans immediately changed to something entirely different. "Are they using some form of hive-mind coordination?" he asked. "Negative, Admiral. Communications intercepts show they are using standard radio transmissions. They appear to be making tactical decisions faster than should be possible for individual commanders." What the hegemony couldn't understand was that human military doctrine had been built around the concept of initiative and individual decision-making. Every human ship captain was trained to assess situations independently and act without waiting for orders. This created a combat style that appeared chaotic from the outside, but was actually incredibly responsive and adaptive. The battle lasted 6 hours, and when it was over, the entire hegemony staging area had been eliminated. 300 hegemony vessels had been destroyed or disabled, while humanity had lost only 40 ships. More importantly, the human fleet had captured intact several hegemony vessels and their crews. providing invaluable intelligence about enemy capabilities and plans. But the real victory was psychological. News of the battle spread through both human and galactic communication networks within days. Humanity had not only survived the first encounter with the hegemony, they had won decisively. More importantly, they had done so by attacking first and dictating the terms of engagement. The response from human space was immediate and electric. Recruitment centers were overwhelmed with volunteers for the expanding fleet. Shipyards worked around the clock to build more vessels. Research facilities pushed the boundaries of technology, combining human innovation with Kalari scientific knowledge to create weapons and defenses that neither species could have developed alone. But the most significant response came from an unexpected source. Within days of the battle, humanity began receiving communications from other species throughout the galaxy. Some were conquered peoples under hegemony rule, others were independent civilizations that had been avoiding hegemony attention. All had the same message. They wanted to help. Sarah Chen found herself at the center of these diplomatic contacts, working with representatives from dozens of different species to coordinate resistance efforts. The Kalari had been right about humanity's potential to unite others against common threats. The hegemony has ruled through fear for centuries, explained Ambassador Veltar, a representative of the Scythian collective that had been fighting a losing guerrilla war against hegemony expansion. But you have shown that they can be beaten. That changes everything. The war was far from over. Intelligence indicated that the main hegemony fleet was still massing for an assault on human space, and their numbers were truly staggering. But something fundamental had shifted in the galactic balance of power. Humanity had proven that the hegemony could be defeated, and that knowledge was spreading like wildfire throughout the galaxy. Admiral Martinez reviewed the strategic situation from her command center on Luna. Human space was now the center of a growing alliance of species united against hegemony domination. Ships from friendly civilizations were arriving daily, bringing new technologies and tactical capabilities to supplement human forces. "Status report," she requested from her staff. "Fleet strength now stands at over 2,000 vessels, with approximately 40% being non-human ships," her chief of staff reported. "Intelligence indicates the main hegemony force will begin their assault in 6 weeks. Their numbers are estimated at approximately 15,000 ships." The odds were still overwhelming, but Admiral Martinez felt something she hadn't expected when this war began: confidence. Humanity had found its strength not just in weapons and tactics, but in their ability to inspire others to fight alongside them. The hegemony had made a critical error in their assessment of human psychology. They had thought that saving one human would be insignificant. Instead, that act of rescue had set in motion events that were reshaping the entire galaxy. The final phase of the war was about to begin, and humanity would not face it alone. The final battle for human space began 6 weeks later, when the main hegemony invasion fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. 15,000 ships, representing the accumulated military might of a galactic empire, had come to end humanity's expansion once and for all. What they found waiting for them would become legend throughout the galaxy. Admiral Martinez stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, the new flagship of the combined human-allied fleet. Around her, representatives from 12 different species worked alongside human officers in perfect coordination. The bridge itself was a symbol of what humanity had accomplished, not just military victory, but the creation of the first truly unified galactic alliance in recorded history. "Enemy fleet detected at system perimeter," reported Lieutenant Commander Zara Singh from the sensor station. "Confirmed count, 14,732 vessels. They're maintaining formation and advancing toward Earth on a broad front." Sarah Chen, now wearing the insignia of a full commander in the Earth fleet, studied the enemy formation through the enhanced sensors that combined human technology with Kalari quantum perception matrices. "They're using the standard hegemony conquest formation," she announced. "Maximum intimidation, overwhelming firepower concentration. They expect us to fall back to Earth and make a last stand around the planet." Admiral Martinez smiled grimly. The hegemony was about to learn that humans didn't fight the way other species did. "All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Martinez. Execute Operation Thunderstrike. Show them what happens when you corner humanity." The human allied fleet had grown to over 3,000 ships, but they were vastly outnumbered. However, numbers weren't everything in space warfare, especially when one side had spent months preparing for exactly this battle, while the other expected easy conquest. The first surprise came when the hegemony fleet reached the orbit of Neptune. What appeared to be empty space suddenly erupted with weapons fire as thousands of concealed defense platforms came online. Human engineers, working with Kalari stealth technology and Scythian quantum manipulation techniques, had turned the outer solar system into a massive trap. Admiral Kethvar, commanding the hegemony invasion force from his flagship Dominator, watched in alarm as the first wave of his fleet came under attack from weapons that shouldn't have existed. The defense platforms were using some form of cloaking technology that his sensors couldn't penetrate, appearing and disappearing as they fired. "How many defense installations are we facing?" he demanded. "Sensors indicate approximately 10,000 platforms, Admiral, but the readings are inconsistent. They appear to be using some form of quantum phasing technology." The platforms weren't just hidden. They were existing partially outside normal space, making them nearly impossible to target while allowing them to fire with devastating effectiveness. Each platform carried weapons designed specifically to exploit hegemony ship vulnerabilities based on months of analysis of captured vessels. But the real shock came when the platforms began moving. Hegemony doctrine was based on fixed fortifications that could be overwhelmed with sufficient firepower. These human installations were mobile, coordinating with each other in complex three-dimensional patterns that maximized their defensive coverage while minimizing their exposure to enemy fire. "Sir," the hegemony tactical officer reported with barely concealed panic, "the human defense platforms are coordinating their movements with mathematical precision. They're creating overlapping fields of fire that our ships cannot penetrate without taking massive casualties." Admiral Kethvar watched his invasion fleet's advance slow to a crawl as ship after ship was destroyed by the seemingly impossible human defenses, but this was only the beginning. The second phase of the human defense activated as the hegemony fleet pushed past the orbital platforms. From the asteroid belt came another surprise. What appeared to be asteroids were actually disguised human ships, created using Kalari organic technology to look like space debris. Hundreds of these hidden vessels emerged from the belt, attacking the hegemony flanks with weapons that the enemy had never seen before. Captain Elena Vasquez piloted her disguised cruiser UES Surprise out of the asteroid field, her ship's organic hull shifting from rock-like camouflage to gleaming battle armor. Around her, similar vessels emerged from hiding, their crews ready to show the hegemony what human creativity could accomplish. "Target the command vessels," she ordered her weapons officer. "Let's show them what happens when they underestimate human engineering." The concealed ships carried the newest human weapons, quantum torpedoes that could phase through shields and armor before detonating inside enemy vessels. Each torpedo was guided by artificial intelligence systems that had been programmed with human tactical thinking, making them unpredictable and nearly impossible to intercept. The hegemony fleet found itself under attack from multiple directions by enemies that appeared and disappeared at will. Their tactical computers, designed to process conventional space warfare, couldn't adapt to the chaos of human battle doctrine. But the worst was yet to come. The third phase began when the main human allied fleet finally revealed itself. But instead of defending Earth as expected, they had positioned themselves throughout the inner solar system in a formation that the hegemony couldn't comprehend. Human ships were scattered among the planets and moons, using gravitational fields and orbital mechanics to enhance their mobility and weapons effectiveness. "All ships, this is Admiral Martinez," came the transmission across all human frequencies. "Remember, they came to our home. They threatened our families. Show them what that means to humanity." What followed was unlike any space battle in galactic history. Human ships didn't form traditional lines of battle or maintain defensive positions. Instead, they fought like a pack of wolves, coordinating their attacks through quantum communication networks that allowed for instantaneous tactical coordination across the entire solar system. The UES Retribution used Jupiter's gravity well to slingshot around the gas giant, emerging with devastating velocity to strike at the center of the hegemony formation. Other human ships used similar maneuvers around Mars, Venus, and even Earth's moon, turning the solar system itself into a weapon. But the human secret weapon wasn't technology, it was psychology. Every human in the fleet knew they were fighting for their home, their families, their species' survival. This wasn't just another battle for territory or resources. This was personal. Commander Sarah Chen coordinated the alien allied forces from her position aboard the flagship. Kalari ships used their advanced energy manipulation to overload hegemony shields. Scythian vessels employed quantum disruption fields that could phase enemy ships out of normal space. Other allied species contributed their own unique capabilities to the battle. "Sarah," Admiral Martinez called over the command channel, "what's the hegemony response to our tactics?" Sarah studied the alien psychology reports that had been developed over months of intelligence analysis. "They're confused and increasingly desperate," she reported. "Hegemony doctrine is based on overwhelming firepower and intimidation. They've never faced an enemy that treats superior numbers as just another tactical problem to solve." The battle raged for 12 hours across the entire solar system. Human ships appeared from behind moons, emerged from planetary rings, and used orbital mechanics in ways that defied traditional space warfare doctrine. They fought with a creativity and adaptability that the rigid hegemony command structure couldn't match. More importantly, they fought with a fury that amazed their allies and terrified their enemies. Every lost human ship was immediately avenged by others, but not with reckless abandon. Human tactics remained precise and calculated even in the heat of revenge, showing a level of disciplined aggression that the galaxy had never seen. Admiral Kethvar watched his mighty invasion fleet being systematically dismantled by what should have been an inferior force. His ships were being destroyed faster than he could deploy them effectively, and his commanders were reporting that human tactics seemed to change every few minutes. "Sir," his communications officer reported with barely concealed fear, "we're receiving transmission requests from 12 sector governors throughout hegemony space. They report rebellions breaking out on conquered worlds. The humans' victory here is being broadcast across the galaxy." This was the moment Kethvar realized the true scope of his failure. The hegemony had ruled through fear and the perception of invincibility. By attacking humanity, they had expected to demonstrate their power to the entire galaxy. Instead, they had given their enemies hope and their subjects inspiration to rebel. The turning point came when human fighters, led by Captain Jake Torres, managed to penetrate the defenses of the hegemony flagship. Using the same unpredictable tactics that had won the first battle, they disabled the massive vessel's command systems and forced Admiral Kethvar to evacuate. "This is Captain Torres to all hegemony forces," Jake's voice carried across all frequencies. "Your flagship is down. Your admiral has fled. You came here to destroy humanity. Instead, you've shown the galaxy that you can be beaten. Any ship that surrenders now will be treated according to galactic warfare conventions. Any ship that continues fighting will be destroyed." What followed was unprecedented in hegemony history. Ship after ship began surrendering. their crews realizing that continued resistance was hopeless. The mighty invasion fleet that had been assembled to crush humanity was surrendering to the very people it had come to destroy. The final phase of the battle saw the complete collapse of hegemony resistance in the Sol system. Of the nearly 15,000 ships that had arrived to conquer humanity, less than 3,000 managed to escape back to hegemony space. The rest had been destroyed, captured, or had surrendered. But the real victory went far beyond the military success. Within days of the battle, rebellions erupted across the entire hegemony empire. Species that had been conquered and enslaved for centuries rose up against their oppressors, inspired by humanity's example and supported by the growing Galactic Alliance. Admiral Martinez stood in the observation deck of the UES Defiance, looking out at Earth hanging peacefully in space. Around the planet, the combined human-allied fleet maintained its protective formation, but the immediate threat was over. Humanity had not only survived its first galactic war, they had won it decisively. Sarah Chen joined her at the viewport, carrying reports from across the galaxy. "The hegemony empire is collapsing," she announced. 17 different species have declared independence, and the Kalari are reporting that Hegemony Central Command has lost contact with over half their territorial governors. And it all started because the Kalari saved one human, Admiral Martinez mused. "Actually," Sarah corrected with a smile, "it started because humans refused to abandon each other. The Kalari saw that quality in us and knew we were worth saving. They were right." The war was over, but its consequences would reshape the galaxy for millennia to come. Humanity had proven that courage, creativity, and unity could overcome even overwhelming odds. More importantly, they had shown that no empire, no matter how powerful, could stand against the combined determination of free peoples fighting for their survival. In the end, the hegemony's greatest mistake hadn't been underestimating human military capabilities. It had been failing to understand what made humanity truly dangerous: their absolute refusal to abandon each other and their ability to inspire others to fight alongside them. The galaxy would never be the same. And it all began because one human was worth saving, and humanity was worth believing in.